Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Dolphin. It's a very cute name. So thanks for joining us today. My name is Chloe. I'm the operations manager at a local charity called V4TP. And today we're very happy to have Robert back again. He is, if you haven't attended our last workshop, Robert is an award-winning photographer with his work appearing in international and local magazines, books, online media, including the South China Morning Post, Time Out, Hong Kong Living, and Action Asia, and many more. And Robert has been living with his family in Hong Kong for the past 25 years, working in media, and most recently for The Economist and Reuters. He is also the founder of Wild Creatures Hong Kong, photographer and author for Bugs of Hong Kong. So let's give a big welcome to Robert, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chloe. Shall I take it away? We ready? Right. Can everyone hear me okay? Chloe, can you give me a thumbs up? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me here today. So like Chloe said, I've been a wildlife photographer here in Hong Kong, focused on just the animals of Hong Kong for the last 2 or 3 years. And I've written a number of publications about the different bugs, co-produced The Snakes of Hong Kong and also The Bugs of Hong Kong. And what we're going to talk about today is photographing these tiny little mini beasts that we have on our doorstep. So what we're going to look at today is a little bit about equipment and how do I get close enough, and also then some of the technical things that we need to do to try and make better photos. And at the end, hopefully we'll have lots of time for questions and answers. So keep your questions until the end, and then Chloe will help us get through all of those. So I'm a professional photographer, so I use huge lenses and things, but today we're only going to be talking about how to take better pictures with your phone or with a tablet or with a mobile device. And so it's really going to be quite simple, some of the things we're looking at, but it will make a big difference to your photo. And if you want to get closer, if you want to take a macro photo, if you want to get a better photo of an object slightly further away, nowadays you can buy these attachments that clip onto your phone and allow you to get much, much better photos. So if you are interested in taking better photos, I highly recommend that you get these little attachments that you can put on your phone. So a big question I get asked all the time is, how do I get close to bugs? Well, I mean, I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and I've managed to take photos of thousands of these different animals. So I would say the first thing is really to try and learn about them. And you can do that just by being out and watching them. Instead of looking at it and moving on, just take your time to see what it does. And in particular, if you can do that with a guide, with somebody, there are companies like Encompass, Lung Fu Shan, and others who can help you. Now, hopefully they'll be opening up again after the 21st of this month. And I really recommend that you go out with these guides to try and find these bugs and see how they take their photos. There are many online forums as well, in nature or photography forums. And there are 3 approaches that I use. But remember, don't ever harm the animal. Now, a lot of photographers like to go out there and grab them and do this and do that. The first consideration you should have when taking pictures, even of small insects, are don't do any harm. So the first thing you can do is pretty easy. Choose bugs that can't get away. So you've got caterpillars, mantis, stick insects, red bugs, spiders in their webs, or even sometimes you can find a dead butterfly or something that can make a very good close-up picture. So that's the easy way, is to find a bug that can't get away. But I would say get your mum or your dad to take you to a butterfly garden or go to a pond or a stream. And in particular, if you can go out at night or early in the morning, all of these pictures were taken at night or early in the morning, because that's when these bugs are sleeping and they're not going to move around as much. You see the tiger beetle in the bottom here. Normally they're hopping around all over the place. This way you can get right up close to them. And a lot of things come out at night, like the dragonflies and cicadas. So while they're shedding their skin, it's a great time to get up close and take their photo. And then there's what I call the ninja element, the advanced way of taking photos. On your phone, you can use the burst mode, or of course you can get better and better equipment. But one thing I've found very useful, you can see a picture of me there, and I've got a big white foam screen in front of me. So that means that when I get close to the bugs, they don't recognize me as a predator. They don't see my human face. So it's very, very useful if you can use the big screen, even a t-shirt or something, cut a hole out of it, and you can get much, much closer to the bugs to take the photos if you use a screen. And certainly lying in wait, being a hunter, looking on the handrails, you're going to find many, many, many more bugs to take photos of. So let's look at some of the technical aspects. Now, the first thing about taking a better photo has to be the subject itself. And that means either really has to stand out. So it has to be either a rare or wonderful or interesting or colorful animal, like a lantern bug, or you can see the little ferret badger here. It's not a technically very good photo, but people love it because it's a very rare, furry little creature. Or you can find like the spider in the web here. My son took this photo a long time ago. It's a common animal, but it's doing something really interesting. It's done this web, and it's early in the morning, and it's got all these dewy little balls in there. So it makes for a much more interesting, fascinating photo because the subject is so wonderful. And when you're thinking about the actual picture, certainly when you get to the higher level of photo competition, and I suggest you start now, is writing a caption, writing more information about why you took the picture of that particular bug. So for example, you've got the 7-spotted ladybird here, quite a simple picture, nice and colorful, but it also happens to be bright red because it's poisonous. So just by adding that caption into it, this poisonous ladybird, because not many people know that these little animals are poisonous, makes it seem much more interesting. And also thinking about what reaction do you want from your photo when you go out? Have you planned it? Are you thinking of a close-up? Are you thinking of colors, scary or funny, human interaction? So here's my son, and this is a picture. We were walking on the Great Wall of China at one point, and this butterfly came along and landed right on his nose. And this is obviously a phone shot. I quickly grabbed the phone. So you've always got to be ready when you're out and about to get that immediate photo. But you can also think about not only being lucky, but being in the right place and planning your photo and preparing for it. So when we think about bug photo ideas, you can also think about not just one photo, but how about if you took 10 or 20 or 50 photos of bugs and put them into one big collage? It makes for a very, very interesting photo compared to perhaps just one photo. And they can be all beetles or butterflies or different subjects. You can combine your photos into being something. So these photos are combined into being the life cycle. So here we have a little caterpillar just hatched. It then turns into this bigger spiky caterpillar, this amazing chrysalis, and then into the common red rose butterfly that we see at the end there. So just some ideas. If you go out and you can find the lilies beginning to bloom at the moment, and lots of different bees and wasps come to the lilies, and it's a great place to then just lie in wait and wait until the bug lands on the lily, and then bang, you've got these beautiful colors of purple and orange, which are very, very colorful. And then you've got your little bug right in the middle there. Or you can use different color themes. Like I mentioned before, the little ladybird is actually signifying that it's poisonous to everything. Or you can find bugs that look like other bugs. So this spider actually looks like the ladybird. The other thing to think about is, from a habitat point of view, is maybe put your phone in a waterproof cover and then put it underwater and take a picture. So this little, it's Hong Kong's only salamander, it's the warty newt. And here he is, and he's got that beautiful orange tummy. And it's quite a strange photo because you don't see many pictures of animals underwater. And that was quite simply just by putting a phone into a waterproof cover and then taking the picture underwater, giving it a very different look. And also from a conservation message, this was something that I did for a butterfly garden, but maybe you can find a butterfly in the middle of a town or in the middle of a city in Hong Kong, and maybe you can show a message about conservation. So when you're taking, one of the other technical aspects is about the background. It's like me using a blurry background at the moment. It brings more focus onto me. So if you look down in the bottom right here, this is, my wife has taken this picture of a changeable lizard. You can see him down in the bottom right-hand corner there, but it's very, very cluttered. And it's not, for me, that's not such an interesting photo. But if you look where I am, I've completely changed my point of view and I've got down really low. So the photo that I took of this animal looks like this. Beautiful blurry background. You've got the sun coming straight onto it. So think when you take your photo about moving so that the background is much more dynamic. Here again, you can see it's a close-up of a bug. And there's nothing behind it. All of that beautiful background is all creamy and diffuse, and it can make for a much better photo. The same here, where you have a tree behind these bugs, not a whole bunch of bushes or fence. Get down to eye level here, you have a mantis giving me a little bit of a quizzical look. But again, there's no distractions behind him. It makes for a very powerful photo. And a crab spider waiting to pounce on me. So when we look at the next aspect, which is composition, there's lots and lots and lots of rules. So the first thing I have to say, you can always break the rules, but I'm just going to go through certain things that can help you take a better photo. One of those is, here's an okay photo of some dragonflies, which are making a nice picture. But I always say, get closer, get even closer as you can. And when you've taken your photo, crop it right down, really fill your frame so that you have a lot more impact. And don't just put your photo in the middle of the frame. Your phones actually have what are called grid lines, which you can use. And these are known as power lines. And when you put the eye of the animal or whatever you want to draw attention to on those power lines, it makes for a much more dynamic and powerful photo. So by moving that eagle's head slightly up and to the right, it becomes a much better composition. Or this bee, by putting it, all that negative space over to the left is all pushing onto it, and it makes for a very, very interesting photo where that your eye is immediately drawn in. So try and think about those power lines instead of just putting your picture right in the middle of the photo. And this is a funny one, this is a bit strange, but it's actually saying the rule of odds. So if you have 3 of something, it's actually more interesting to the viewer, proven scientifically, than 2 or 4. So if you can find 3 bugs together, it's going to be a more interesting picture. Then we have the viewpoint in terms of composition. So if you want to take a picture of your bug, or in this case, for example, the cat, get right down to its level. I often find myself lying down on the ground to take a lot of my best animal photos. Or completely change your viewpoint, like this woman who's sowing rice you could actually lie down and have things land on top of you. So imagine if you were under a flower taking a picture of a bug upwards. And again, you can play with reflections, or you can get closer and closer for that macro shot. This also goes back to those grid lines and something called negative space. So this just means if your bug or animal has a direction which it is looking or moving, make sure that you leave enough space around its head. Otherwise, if you look at the top photo, it looks as though it's going to bump its head into the side of the photo. It's certainly not as pleasing. And if you move it to the right, use that power line to put its eye onto that place and let it move into the photo, and it becomes a much more dramatic, more powerful photo. Then we talk about lighting and painting with light and controlling the sun. So when I mean by painting with light, I hope you can see the resolution here, but if you look at the two different pictures, the picture at the bottom was taken very early in the morning. It's really clear, it's sharp, and later in the day it gets foggy and misty and or heat haze. Go out very early in the morning, go out after rain, go out early in the evening, perhaps sometimes, just when the sun's beginning to go down, and that soft light will give you much, much, much more interesting and better pictures. Or how about taking a picture when the sun's actually going down and you've got these beautiful golden colors, either behind it or in this case, reflecting on a pond. So when you, for example, take a picture of your friends, I know my wife wouldn't like her face to look like that orange at the top. That's really harsh lighting. Harsh lighting shows texture. Very interesting. If you want to get a really spiky caterpillar or bug, you can shine a light right on it. But otherwise, if you're trying to show form or shape, then that's why the vloggers have those big soft ring lights that they use to make their face look very beautiful and soft. So really think about the lighting, and we're going to look at an example of that in a moment, because one of the big tricks that I have is I can control the sun, and I do that. So I'm going to show you an example of typically what would happen. So I did this just the other day. I went out with my phone to try and find an animal, and typically this is what people would show me. Oh, I found a cicada. Well, it's very small in the picture. So remember that first rule, let's get really close to it. Let's get right up close to it. Let's zoom in. And now you've got that blurry background. And that's a much, much, much more interesting photo of a very weird, interesting looking creature. So by getting closer, we've already got a much more interesting picture. Now, the key trick is to have a torch with you. Now, most phones today also have a little torch on them, so you can borrow your friend's phone. And remember what I said about that harsh light. Look at the hairs, look at the spikes, look at the detail in its face. Just looks fantastic compared to that earlier photo, and much, much, much more yellow. So I'll often use a torch, or actually I use diffused flash to light the subject. So when we look with the torch directly, the photo on the left, you can see the light is very harsh. So what I'll do is I'll put a handkerchief or a piece of white paper or a piece of foam in between the torch and the bug. And so you can see the photo on the right here compared to the left, it becomes more diffuse. It becomes more attractive. It becomes more beautiful. So next time you're out, just take a torch and a piece of paper when you find your bug and shine the torch on it and see what happens. So for example, this is a little plastic bug that I had, just to show you what I mean. So the top left picture is just walking up to it and taking its picture. And then look at that bottom picture. By shining the torch on it, boom, it's got red eyes, it's got a big shadow, and it looks really ferocious. And then the top right photo is where I use the diffusion. You see, there's no real shadow. It's really nice. For me, that's probably the best photo, but the most dramatic photo is the one where I shone the torch. So get a little torch and go out when you take the photos. So you can also play around with the point of view. This one on the left, actually I used that, it's a tricky one. You can use the panorama view, not to go left to right sometimes, but to go up to down, and then it will accentuate whatever's in the middle of the photo and give you some very strange looking photos. Or you can look from the bottom, from the top down, or what I've done on the right here is include some habitat. So you can see it's on the trunk with the blue sky and the leaves behind it, but it's very dark, isn't it? So when you look at the picture of the left, which is typically how you see it when you would normally find it, you can see the sun is coming from the top down onto the bug, but now I shine my torch the other way onto the back of it. Look at how the wings come alive in detail and so yellow. And now I've got a photo which I'd be proud of taking with my big camera, because now I've got a sharp photo, I've got habitat. For me, I'm very, very now pleased with that photo. And the other great thing about it, if I go closer, and even closer, bearing in mind this was taken with a phone, you've got a fantastic amount of detail there. Very, very sharp, beautiful depth of field, nice and clear, all because I shone a torch on its wings. Very, very simple thing to do to make a much, much better photo. The other thing that a lot of the phones have is flash. So again, same thing, the photo on the left, its wings are all dark because you've got the sun coming in behind it, and then using the flash, it really lights up and you can see all the detail in its wings on the photo on the right. Look at that ladybird. The other great thing is if you take a picture at night with flash, everything else goes really dark. So you've got these wonderful creatures that seem to be crawling out of the black towards you. Remember what I said about the background, no distractions. And this one was actually on my window, and you can see the reflection of his little face upside down there as he's crawling towards me. So I also see, and I know we've got quite young viewers here, but post-production, by doing something on your computer, you can really change and accentuate the image. But actually, you don't need a computer. There's this really, really good software. There's a few different ones, but I think the best one is called Snapseed. And it's free, it's by Google, and it does basic adjustments. You can do cropping, exposure, color boosting, but then you can push another button and it's got all these amazing tools. It's like being a professional photographer. And the great thing is, it's so simple. It's so intuitive to use. I love playing with this. It's even got a perspective thing. So if you take a picture of your mum, you can make her nose really, really big or really, really small. It's great fun to play around with. But it also means you can crop the image, or you can make these lovely vignettes. Look at a completely different style of photo just by pushing one button. So what I did with this one, if you remember the picture on the right that I had, which I like, but this one I've blurred out the background more, I've cropped it differently, and I've used the color saturation and the contrast. That took about 30 seconds of going click, bonk, click, bonk, click, bonk, on my phone, and when I export it, and it's all for free. It's a fantastic program to help you take better photos. So if you can remember three things, get closer, use a torch, and maybe boost the image with its cropping and with color later on, and you will have much, much better images. So when you go out there, you're going to find thousands of different bugs. Insects, arachnids, myriapods, crustaceans, they are all over the place. So you've got to hunt them down. And you may also find, when you're looking for these animals, you may be lucky enough to find maybe reptiles, amphibians, or if you go down to the ocean and the seashore, then you can find lots of other things down there like anemones or the hermit crabs, which are very colorful, and other things in the ocean. All great fun. So just wrapping up there, like I said, maybe the three things. One is get closer. Two, use different lighting to accentuate it. And three, crop and do a bit of post-production. So I'll be very happy to take any questions. Chloe, do we have any questions?
Hi, Dolphin.
Yes.
Hello, you have a question?
My question is, how do I get like the blur on the photo? Is that just naturally?
I think there's maybe two ways. Using a phone is quite difficult because of the wide angle that you're doing. So one is, if you get closer to it and the background is further away, then the background will be blurry or more blurry. But you can accentuate that or put blur where there is no blur in the post-production if you get a snapseed and you have your photo, right? So you can do both. Or you have to buy very expensive equipment. Like when I use a big lens, I can play with the depth of field much more. But otherwise, get as close as you can, maybe even zoom in on it, and then do blur in post-production. That's a great question, because if you can blur the background and get rid of the distractions, then it is going to be a much better photo.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dolphin. We have another question from Nicole. Sorry, let's go to Edison first. So Edison asks, do you usually take many pictures before you can choose a good one?
That's a great question. Yes, is a simple answer. But if I take 20, 30 photos, and this drives my wife crazy, I will delete all of my photos except one or two, because there's no point in keeping photos, second-rate photos, because believe me, you will never look at them again, and because they're not your favorite photos. Now, I also do that with my holiday photos, which is why my wife gets so annoyed with me. But if I'm taking a photo of a bug, that's also why I use burst mode on the phone. I'll go, because one of the photos normally will be sharper, better, and it'll just be like, ooh, that's the one I want. And then I will delete immediately all the other photos. And it's very hard to do that. Not many people like to delete their photos, but if there's one thing I can tell you to do, delete most of your photos. Just keep your good ones. But yeah, I normally take, I don't know, it depends on the subject. If I'm out with a bird, maybe I'll take 200 or 300 photos of the same thing. But if I'm with my phone and I'm taking pictures of a bug, maybe I'll take 10, and then maybe down from a different angle and then from a different angle. So maybe I'll take 20 or 30 photos and then choose one. Good question.
Thank you, Robert. And thanks, Edison, for your question. So next we have Nicole, and she wants to ask you, same question for blur, but can we use portrait mode?
No. I mean, you can try. I've tried so many times, but unless, I think the portrait mode only works when it recognizes a face. So if you maybe have a meerkat or a civet cat or something which maybe looks vaguely human, or you can put a photo of a face next to it. But I've tried, unless you've got a bug that looks like a face, because portrait mode would allow you to do like the blur that I had behind me, right? It's just a much nicer way. Certainly when I take a picture of my friends or whatever, I always do portrait mode and I say, oh, it's so nice, because it makes such a difference. But unfortunately, they don't do that. Now, I understand that the new phones, because my phone's an iPhone 10, I think the new phones actually have a depth of field blur thing where you can actually choose to blur things in front of or behind, which is a fantastic, I mean, it's just amazing what the AI does on these phones now. But until they come up with a portrait of bug mode, which they don't have yet, then no, you can't use portrait mode. I've tried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Nicole. And we have Henry. Do you have a question for Robert?
Yes, I do. A quick question. How much are those special lenses? And if you would buy them, where would you buy them?
Well, I have to say, be careful because you get what you pay for. And you can go out and buy them really cheaply off Taobao or online. And then they arrive and you try them and you go, this is rubbish. What a waste of money. So the first thing is, I would say, don't buy the cheapest ones. That's just advice. Maybe that's true for camera gear in general, but there is a big difference between the very bad ones, the cheap ones, and then the medium and the top ones. I would say there's much less. So go for something in the mid-price range and you won't be disappointed. I think that they sell them. Most of the ones I see are actually promoted online, but I think if you go to one of the computer centers, so we have a computer center in Wan Chai and a photo computer center in Mongkok and Sham Shui Po, they sell those kind of things. But be careful, don't get the cheapo ones. They're not worth it. And yeah, they have very expensive ones too, costing hundreds, thousands of Hong Kong dollars. And I would say, maybe not. What you're looking for is a magnification of ×7. That, for me, from what I've read and heard and experienced, is the sweet spot. So ×7 magnification. Some of them come with one lens, some of them come with 3 lenses. But I would say go and have a chat with one of the shop people in the computer centers around Hong Kong, or the camera centers around Hong Kong. Do you know where they are? In Sham Shui Po and Wan Chai and Mongkok. Actually, if you Google computer center, Sham Shui Po or Mongkok or Wan Chai, then you'll get the address. Go and have a look. Don't buy the first one. And they have loads of different attachments for your phone and cases and stands and ring lights and everything.
Thanks, Henry.
I see. Thank you.
I just saw Luke that suggested Sim City in Mongkok. It's good for
There you go. Yeah. So what was that? Say it again, I think.
Sim City in Mongkok.
Yeah, SIM. Yeah,
Yes,
that's very good, actually. Yeah, that's a great one. I think that's probably where I would go. They also have camera bags, all kinds of stuff in there. But yeah, they have the really good stuff in there. And with shopkeepers, yeah, they obviously like to sell the things with higher margin, but they're normally quite helpful if you tell them what you want. And you can try it while you're there. I would say don't buy something without trying it. They're very good at opening the boxes and letting you try it.
great.
And it will make a difference. It's quite cool how much closer you can get with these attachments. It really is, without having to zoom in, you get much better photos. You can turn your phone into a good macro camera.
Thank you so much. And we have another question from Mark. So Mark is asking, hi, here's a question about taking photos during nighttime. It seems like the flashlight might bring disturbance to wildlife. Is it suggested to use flashlight or continuous lighting or torch? Thank you.
That's it. Well, I mean, by stepping into a forest, I think that we have disturbance nowadays just by breathing. It depends how far you want to take it. I know a lot of people, when they're out looking for fireflies, will carry red lights because a lot of bugs and animals are not so disturbed by a softer red light. But the way that I find most bugs is I use a small head torch. It doesn't have to be very powerful. And why I use a head torch is because spiders, moths, snakes, lizards, frogs, you can see the light bounce back from their retinas. So it's much easier for me to find things that way. Like I'd said before, I don't believe I'm doing harm to the animals by shining a light on them. Clearly, I am disturbing them because I am shining a light on them, and I may even get quite close to them. So you have to think, am I doing this animal harm? No, you don't shine it into an owl's eyes because it's got extremely sensitive retinas. But if I've got a spider in front of me, then I wouldn't go with a massive, great, powerful beam, but I would use, actually most of the time I'm using diffused light. Like I showed you, I have a foam board in front of my torch, and that softens the light. So I think you have to be aware of how much disturbance you are doing. It's a good question. And it's something I think a lot of us struggle with as photographers, because you have the people who say, you should never go into the forest. And you've got other people who pick things up and hurt them and litter everywhere. And I think you have to find your place somewhere where you're comfortable doing no harm to the animals. Tricky question.
Thank you, and great question as well. We have another one from Ariane, and she's asking, is the rule of threes just having 3 items in the subject matter, or is it about the spacing?
Okay, yeah, maybe I went through that a bit quickly. So there are 2 things. There's the rule of odds. And the rule of odds says 1 thing, 3 things, or 5 things in a photo is better than an even number. So if you've got 3 bugs, it will look better than if you've got 4 bugs. Okay, so that's one rule. That's the rule of odds. Then the rule of thirds, it's not the rule of threes, it's the rule of thirds, where your grid lines divide across like this. If you remember how the grid lines work, like 3, like that. So that is where you are placing the animal onto a space, or the eye normally, onto a power cross where the 2 lines cross. And then the animal looks out into what we call negative space, which is the space in front of it.
Does that
I hope that's clear.
Does that answer your question, Ariane?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. And so we have one more question. What camera lens would you use for very small insects?
Well, if I'm using my phone, then I just have to use my phone, or like I say, an attachment. For my professional photography, I use a 100mm macro lens. And if I want to get really close to things, then I put what's called an extension ring inside, which then allows me to get even closer to it. So typically I can get within about 10 centimeters from the front of my lens to the actual animal. And if I want to go beyond that, then I really have to think about the different lighting and everything else. So macro photography means basically 1-to-1. So the image that I'm looking at in my camera is the same size as the actual animal. So if the spider's the size of my pinky fingernail, that's the actual size it is showing on the sensor of my camera. And 1-to-1 macro photography is quite hard to do, and it's amazing with the phones that we have nowadays that you can hover it over there and take a picture, and like with the cicada, you're almost at 1-to-1. It's just fantastic what you can do. But the problem with macro and getting close photography is always the lighting. Because when you get close, you're covering it, there's not so much light. That's why it's so important to have a flash or to have the torch with you to be able to light the subject.
Great. Thank you, Robert. We have one more question. So,
Okay, keep going.
Sally, how can we photograph insects in flight?
No, with great difficulty. I have tried that and tried that and tried that. It's a great question. I suppose there's two ways. First of all, with a phone, ooh, good luck. Simply because your shutter speed to take an insect in flight, like a dragonfly's wings move at about 4,000th of a second. So to actually freeze its wings, even a bug flying, you really have to be above 1,000th of a second. But you can use the burst mode on your phone. I don't know how it works on Android, but on an Apple, you just hold the shutter button and it goes. So I used to take pictures of my son skiing and other things. And so that burst mode, maybe you'll have something sharpish. And I would say after 2 years now, I can normally tell when a bug is going to take off. Not always, I wish, but like, for example, a ladybird, if you disturb a ladybird, you know, the old song, ladybird, ladybird, fly away home. It's because if you ever get a ladybird on your finger or on a plant, it will go to the top, spread its wings, and boom, it's gone. So you can watch it climb up knowing. So I would say the first rule would be trying to figure out when they're actually going to take off, because what they'll often do, the beetles will spread their wings and then fly. So you have a nanosecond, you've got to be really quick, when its wings are out, but it's not actually flying. That's the moment maybe it's best if you want to try and take a picture of its wings. Because once it's in flight, your camera has to focus on it and its wings are beating at around 1,000, 2,000th of a second. So they're really just going to be blurry. But I've spent, for example, with my big telephotos, I'll spend half an hour to an hour taking pictures of dragonflies in a particular place where I think it's good. And after an hour, maybe I get 1 or 2 decent photos. If I'm lucky, I'll get one really, really good one. But that's also because I know by then where they're moving, where they're taking off. And the great thing about dragonflies is they almost always come back to the same perch. So if you disturb it, it'll fly away and then it'll come back. So you can then take it. So learning more about them is very helpful. But let me know how you get on, because that's a very advanced occupation to take insect. Birds is hard enough, but insects in flight is very hard.
Great. Thank you, Sally, for the question. Thanks, Robert. We also have Henry.
Hello.
Hi.
So a quick question. It's actually 2 questions, but they're both linked. First question is that, is there insects that you could take a photo with a microscope? So is there small insects that could be found in a microscope? Because I could ask my science teacher if I could borrow it, and I might be able to, if there is, I might be able to take some decent photos.
Well, actually, hopefully when it opens up again, I would recommend you go to the Biodiversity Museum at Hong Kong U. It's open to the public, and they're doing a lot of insect photography with microscopes. And it is amazing because it's just like the most powerful lens that you can have beyond anything that I have. The problem with taking a photo with a microscope is the depth of field, because it's very shallow. So you've only got a tiny bit of the bug. So Benoit, who's an ant specialist, he takes pictures of ants and ants' heads. And then he takes like 50 photos and stacks them all together. So it's a little bit advanced, but there's no reason why. They use something called digiscoping for, oh, there you go, for telescopes. And can you, if there's any pictures of the ants? I don't know if they've got a poster. No, that's Benoit in the middle. Anyway, no ant pictures, but they are really amazing. But if you take, it's quite simple. If you have your microscope in front of you and then take your phone literally and put the lens of your phone where your eye should be, there's no reason why you can't take a picture through the microscope of what you're looking at. So that's a brilliant idea to get an amazing picture, because you'll be able to look at an ant's head as big as my head on the photo screen. So it would look amazing. Now, those are just photos from the Biodiversity Museum. Oh, hold on, go up. Yeah, the one on the left, you see the spider's leg there. That's the kind of thing that he's taking. Oh, it's a cricket. So it's actually a bit of a cricket that rubs together to make a noise. And that was taken with a microscope. So it depends on the magnification. I think probably 64 times you're going to have amazing photos of. The only problem is you're going to have a dead bug, because I don't know many bugs that like to hang around under a slide in a microscope. But I'm sure you can find some dead ants or something somewhere. Remember, do no harm, but good luck. That's a great project.
Thank you for your question, Henry and Robert. Dr. Benoit is actually hosting a workshop for us as well. So if you go to our website, you can see the schedule for all the workshops, and he'll also be one of the speakers.
Yeah, ask him about his bug photography. He's actually, we call him Ant-Man, because he's specialized in ants. He's discovered like about 200 different species of ants in Hong Kong. But what's funny is he's 6'4", so he's really, really tall. And all the ants are right down here. So he's a very, very tall guy, but he's a very interesting speaker. Yeah, do watch that. That'll be great.
Thank you so much, Henry. All right. Do you have any more questions for Robert before we go today? All right, if not, then maybe we can take a group picture before we end this workshop today. Do you mind to turn on your camera so we can take a group picture, and we will share this on our site, on our social media. And also for next week, on Thursday, we have Andrea Ricci, which is the Executive Director of Hong Kong Shark Foundation, and she'll be talking about sharks and all the small sea creatures living in the same ecosystem as them. So if you're interested, please follow us and take a look at our workshop so you can see us about all of the workshop that we're providing. All right, ready? We're gonna take a screenshot very quickly. All right, ready, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you everyone, and thanks Robert. If you're interested, please go to our website. We will have all of the information about our workshop. Just to show you very quickly, this is what you will see once you go to our website. And here. You can see our last workshop also by Robert is already updated here. So you can see all of the workshop recaps over here, and you will see their schedule about the topic that we're going to talk about. So today we'll be photographing small animals and bugs. And then next week, next Thursday, same time, same Zoom link, we have Andrea talking about sharks and small sea creatures. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, then we will end our workshop today. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks again, Robert. Hopefully we'll get to see you guys soon.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.